Hello everybody, welcome to yet another episode of Hoop Room at Hoopsters. Today we have with us Lt.Col retired A. Sekhar, who is a soldier educationist, a leader, a trainer and a mentor. He has been a familiar face as a panelist and a moderator on some of the high-profile webinars on education. Welcome sir, it's lovely to have you on the show. And I'm sure we can learn a lot from you.
Thank you for having me, sir. It's always a learning experience from anyone, especially with hair as grey as yours and mine.
Thank you very much, sir. The first question, why did you agree to come on this show?
I found you an interesting person. Two, the programs you are doing sounds very interesting. And three, I'm from Bangalore, supporting a fellow Bangalorean.
That's a nice way to put it. Okay. An army officer in the field of education. How did you manage this transition?
Oh, firstly, sir, I always say in a lighter note, when the bullet comes to you, it doesn't come in front of me and say, you're a postgraduate in English and chemistry. It will take a different turn from the Pakistani. So I'm an Army Education Corps officer, sir. I belong to the Army Educational Corps. I am a technical officer who has been permanently commissioned so that we can look after the education of our troops. When we started earlier on, the entrance was class 5 pass. Then it became 8 pass, and then later on it became 10th, and now people are moving into 12th and graduation. At that point of time, professionally and academically, we had a responsibility to move them up. And also those Sainik military schools, Kendriya Vidyalayas, army schools. So we are a relatively small corps of about 400 officers, and we always work at the level of what we call a brigade. A brigade normally has about 6,000 troops, and we are responsible for their training in terms of academic training and of course courses, skill development like map reading, sir. Their promotions are linked to that. Part 1. We are also instructors in Indian Military Academy, National Defense Academy, there whether academic subjects as also management and science leadership excellence. So we are involved at that level. NDA, Officers Training Academy, Chennai, Indian Military Academy, Dehradun, Sainik schools, military schools, RIMC. So despite the belief that army officers, their brain is slightly less than functional, in public perception, we do carry some gray matters.
I don't think anybody thinks that you are the army personnel less gray matter, but since you say so, it's a good look at it.
It's normally the guy will drink rum given to horses, pado a chicken, and keep saying Bharat Mata Ki Jai. Lifestyle, life on ground is slightly different to that.
Okay. So I have been following you on all your webinars and stuff like that, and you are today very popular and sought after as a moderator and a panel expert. What's your feedback on the kinds of webinars that are being conducted in the areas of education? What's your feedback? You've been on all kinds. I've seen you from,
Yes. Firstly, thank you for the compliment. Although when I'm a moderator, most of the panelists are slightly apprehensive for various reasons. So one, there has been an explosion in terms of webinars. One, that is just about the time the pandemic started. Two, almost all of us in the field of education, the moment we open our mouth, we cannot stop for the next 40 minutes. One period takes 40 minutes. And three, we are verbose at many levels, but over a period of time, good organizations have identified good speakers. And in panels like School News and otherwise, there is now an increasing realization that good Educative, intellectually stimulating panel discussions are welcome, and gradually it is becoming more important. I wish some of the better English and Hindi speaking channels involve us so that we can give a different perspective. It is starting, but it is almost always when a student runs away or when there is a crisis, you have the token educationist to give a point of view. So I believe there is real scope for improvement. However, I am also a believer that lots of good work is being done.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of good work being done. And I really hope this good work actually comes in the forefront, because that needs to bring about the change. So before we get on to the actual subject of the day, the co-curriculum in the new age, what do you really think is happening at the school level? What is happening to the schools around the country? I'm talking about the private, government, and which, well, the idea is to understand this before we say, okay, what needs to be done further.
Okay. First of all, India, the big picture, we have 32 crore, 320 million students, of which about 180 million are in K to 12 schools. That is the population of the United States in total. 320 million. We have close to 1,000 universities, 15.5 lakh schools, of which about 27,000 are CBSE, 3,000 around. Today, the 10th and 12th of the CISE, ICSE has come through, and about 1,000 international schools. Rest of the schools are in about 35 boards across India, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari, including Tibetan, including some of the union territories like Chandigarh. So the core of our students are studying in state board schools, not in central board schools. CBSE tends to attract disproportionate attention. That's point number one. Point number two, the penetration of digital devices, internet, classrooms. I'm dividing it into three parts. The pre-pandemic India, present continuous pandemic, and post-pandemic when it comes. 45% of our students study in private schools. And about 2 lakh private schools have been closed. 40% of all our private schools have a fee structure of less than 1,000 rupees per month. Less than 1,000 rupees per month. This is in terms of what your numbers are. In India, out of the 16 lakh schools which I talked about, almost 30% of them are single teacher, less than 100 student schools. These are the numbers. I pause here if you have any follow-up question, otherwise I'll continue.
No, please continue.
Right. Present continuous phase post-March 2020, 17 months and counting. There is a disaster which is already happening, which will continue to happen. Disaster is the right word. Just imagine a picture, normal classroom as we look at. We look for a 40-minute class, we go with say 4 learning objectives and outcomes. And normally we cover 3. In an online present continuous system, it's already reduced to 3. And the access to the average student is coming down. The average attendance is just about 40 to 50%. Any principal having more than 60% is celebrating it. Even more so, these are numbers from urban schools. In urban schools, which I am aware of, attendance of 60% and above is considered special. So there is a reduction in the number of students attending. The learning outcomes and objectives are not being met. There are significant learning gaps. It's getting worse by the day. Azim Premji University, or our own data which we have found out, is that there is a minimum loss of about 30%. At the higher education level, they are talking about 40%. I will end this part of the conversation by saying, will you get your tooth extracted by a dentist who has learned dentistry online? Will you keep your daughter part of a swimming pool where the swimming coach has learned swimming online? Or do we get a bridge done when he has learned how to do a bridge or a house online? The challenges are significant. However, on the other side of it, many good governments led by outstanding IAS officers have tried to bridge this gap. People doing it out in the open, people going in auto rickshaws, open air classes, somebody climbing up a hill to take classes, teachers visiting parents getting together. So there are so many initiatives happening, but the stark reality, sir, is we are losing a great deal of the learning advantages we had earlier. It is now collapsing by the day.
Do you think it will recover, or do you think it's a trendsetter?
I wish it recovers. It has to recover for the future of India. There are two schools. There are a lot of people who believe that once schools reopen in a flow, it will pick up. But I'm afraid that there will be learning gaps. 16 months already is too huge a gap. Imagine when the schools reopen, hopefully full time, next academic year, say April 2021. In about 10 months, you will have to recover what we have not been able to cover up that year, get their socio-emotional balance sorted out, and then take them forward. The teachers, school leaders, the bridge courses, the way we go up, it is going to be a tremendous task. There will be some recovery, but I'm afraid full recovery will be a mirage.
A mirage. Okay. But don't you agree that the COVID has actually exposed the failure in the system? And today, the parents couldn't handle just 1 year of being alone at home with the children. The children couldn't handle being alone. But do you think there's a whole system failure which was
Maybe,
exposed?
no, sir, please look at India and look at its journey. When we started as an independent nation, we had less than 10% female literacy. So what the nation looks at a big picture, the NEP, etc. It's not necessarily what the elite look at. We still have our 3 square meals a day. Go to any school principal, they'll tell you on an average, they get about 10 parents crying that I have lost my job. So the issue is one, does the school system have significant systemic drawbacks? Yes. Two, do we require to fix it? Yes, we have to. But from where we have traveled when we had independent India and Ambedkar talking about it, we have traveled a great deal. We have come to a level where female literacy has improved significantly. Now, if we have to become a world superpower with things changing by the minute, we require to drastically reimagine the system. There I agree. There are systemic flaws, but at that level, getting the students to the school was more important. Getting them and giving them food was important. I'll share with you a story which is real. This is a story of Medhak, former Indian Prime Minister, Indira Gandhi's constituency. She fought from Raebareli, she fought from Medhak. At that point of time, she retained Medhak. That's how it became famous. It's a few kilometers off Hyderabad. In the middle of May, this happened about 15, 20 years back, the farmers came forward and spoke to the collector. The collector was told, please keep the schools open. He said, middle of May, school kyun khol ke rakhna hai? The farmers said, we have had a bad harvest. If you don't keep open the schools, our children will die of hunger. The collector had the immense sense to do it on ground. So The problem is we have social, we have cultural, we have economic, we have political. All these issues come together for our education. So when we are dealing with that, we will have to look at it through different prisms. And also today is Guru Purnima. Almost everyone salutes the Guru. But imagine what do we do with the soldier? Imagine what do we do with the teacher? 15th August, 26th January, Vande Mataram. If you want your son or daughter to join the armed forces, my only son's chartered accountant, doctor. The same thing happens with the teacher's profession. Some of us are here as volunteers, but on ground it is the second or the third choice. And 80% of our teachers are ladies. The lady is first a mother, then a daughter-in-law, then a spouse, then she comes to the school. Can you see the tremendous stress she is under? And I always share a big story, and it's an easy story. Imagine teacher Neha is working in a school led by Colonel Sekhar. Colonel Sekhar gives her some work. Instead of sleeping at 10 o'clock in the night, she sleeps at 11. Next day morning, she has got two children, a son and a boy. Her in-laws stay with her. Her husband also works. Next day morning, that person oversleeps. It's raining just the way it is doing in Bangalore and some parts here. The milkwoman doesn't come. And Neha pushes her husband, Sunoji, Tora, doodh leke aiye. Like good MCPs, he resents, he turns around and sleeps. She goes and gets the milk, gives the cup of tea to her mother-in-law, who says, "Bahu nokari kar rahi hai, chai bhi time pe nahi milti." The first fight starts. The children have not done their homework, and she reaches the school 15 minutes late. Colonel Sekhar is standing there. Neha, you are late. Actually, I said, no excuses. She goes into a class. Student Sachin is in the midst of a tough custody battle between his doctor parents. He has not done his homework. Will Neha be polite to the student? The answer I get in all my workshops is, no, sir, we'll get angry. How can we make Neha, the stress teacher, calm in the classroom? That skill of that teacher will transform the classroom, sir. So that challenge we can never forget. Back to you, sir.
Yes, definitely in the way we should look at things. And that brings us to the subject of the day, co-curriculum.
There is a question somebody has asked.
Has somebody asked a question? Sorry. No, nobody's asked a question.
Yes, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Ms. Lakshmi Rao has asked a question. What's your suggestion to fill the learning gaps apart from the bridge courses?
Yeah, good question, madam. We have worked out on it. We'll have to get this in a combined manner. The teacher has to be a co-parent. The parent has to be a co-teacher. We will have to look at it holistically. I would look at an entry behavior understanding for the student. What is the entry behavior of the child post-pandemic reaching the school? What are the gaps we identify? Get the common gaps sorted out at the school level with extra coaching, with extra support, and get some of the gaps sorted out at home with parental support. It's going to be a tough ask, but I believe it is possible.
But isn't it very difficult considering most of the parents, at least as what we know, are not really involved in the child's interaction?
I don't have a choice. I am answering a question asked by her in specific terms. Otherwise, we'll have to live with those gaps. Sir, what is now happening is, we have to get today a student joining the school today will look for a job in 2040s. Nursery now, the child is going to look for a job when India celebrates 100 years of independence. At that time, what are the jobs available on ground? Today, as I was reading Times of India, India's population is beginning to flatten up. So we are now a country under 30, 60%. We'll become a country over 50 in the 2040s. So geriatric care, old age care, and its attendant problems will start coming up. So if we have to have a safe country in terms of livelihood satisfaction, we have to train the student for the college, for his career, as well as for life, wherein he or she will take care of his or her family and parents. And the China syndrome, where a husband and a wife have to look after 8 people. Otherwise, we'll have a social explosion in our hands. So there is no choice but to do it, sir. And I believe organizations like yours have got a huge role to play in doing these bridge courses.
Okay, that exactly bring again, like we are trying to get into the today's story. So what does a child need to have as a skill set to face the future? Because we are still talking academics in today's world, we're still talking engineering, medicine, which is a disaster. Okay, so where do you think we should lead on to?
Okay. Again, a story is a better example. This is real life, and this has happened in Delhi. A five-star school with air-conditioned buses, etc., take their children, about 100 of them, on a picnic to the outskirts of Delhi. Similarly, a municipal school from Delhi takes about 100 students of theirs also for a picnic, coincidentally at the same spot. Both the lot of students are coming back about 10 kilometers short of Delhi. There is a massive downpour, roads get clogged, all the systems collapse, and the buses are stranded. The students of the municipal school, led by their lady teacher and the male teacher, get down from the bus, take their bags, start walking towards their houses. They reach home by 9:30. This event happens around 7. While the parents of that five-star school do a dharna in front of the police commissioner's office, the students are still stranded there. Which is the better school? Balgandekar sir. So I come down to your point. What are we looking for? I'll give you an armed forces example. We know Field Marshal Manekshaw was visiting troops during the 71 war. So during the 71 war, firing was happening. There was a Gurkha himself was from the Gurkha battalions. So as firing was on, the Gurkha ran to pick up khokas of the bullets which he had fired. And the field marshal got extremely angry. Why are you doing it? No, sir, ye khoka wapas dena hai. Otherwise, my weapon havildar will get upset with me that you have misused your weapon. So, one, in schools, we are overtraining them. Overtraining is not going to help. Second, we are going to set them up for a world. They are going to live in the 22nd century. You and I will not, sir. We won't live the 22nd century, but we believe we know what they require in the 22nd century. So I will not talk about 21st century skills, etc. I will say common sense skills. What does the student require to lead not a happy life, a peaceful life? What are the skill sets he would require? Is the student willing to change his job every 5 years as is expected? Willing to learn, unlearn, relearn? Willing to look at life in a perspective which is different from what our parents fill us up with? Are you willing to look at it in terms of collaboration? That is the challenge the majority of our schools have not been able to. That is where hopefully your hoopster comes into.
So, but everybody talks about skill sets, etc., and all those things. But I have found most of the schools, they are still very happy doing a yoga class or a dance class or a theater class as part of the so-called co-curriculum. So, having said this, how would you define co-curricular? Especially you're coming in from two angles of being a trained military officer and educationist.
No co-curricular. Everything is curricular for me, sir. I don't have the concept of co-curricular at all.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Thank you very much.
What you are doing, what I see in your excellent presentations you share where you are fulfilling a need where, I mean, to give you an example, and this is sad. A student of mine lost his mother to cancer, right? So I forced each of the students to talk to that boy. The boy was initially hesitant. I spoke and I got them. The vast majority of students did not know how to speak to that child. And at least 10 of them said all the best at the end of the conversation. The boy is sitting with his mother's dead body. So from the basics of a conversation, sir, from the story I shared with you of a 7-star school, firstly, parental training in the right way. And I have a lot of questions regarding this with the Bangalore parental community. Are we willing to trust the teacher? The challenge today, sir, is everyone has gone to school. They believe they are better teachers than the class teacher. With the last 16 months, one good thing is parents have understood the value of a formal school. That's a big story which we understand. Equally, schools have also understood the value of having a running school. But however, in a school, officially, sir, you're supposed to have 1200 instructional hours, classes 11 and 12. 9 and 10, 1100 instructional hours. Classes 5 to 8, 1000 instructional hours. Where do you get it? So for schools, for their survival, they will have to show numbers. And parents look at those numbers and not realizing that the media drive of 3 lakh students go to quota, only 25,000 make it. What happens to the rest 2,75,000? Who answers for the 75 suicides that happen there? So, sir, if Hoopster can look at it, the classic, I don't like that term, 360 degrees. What does the student have to do? Is he emotionally stable? Is he socially stable? Is she culturally stable? Is she human relations wise stable? And that will come through only. And real education happens outside of textbooks, outside of syllabus. That is where real learning happens. And that gap is going to be an even bigger challenge. What Lakshmi Rao asked about gaps.
That's so true. So true. Yeah, we are trying to work around it. Let's, we put everything together on that. But tell me, sir, if people know that this is the requirement, if people know that this is important, why aren't the schools adopting these things? It's simple. It's not complicated.
Bedchal, I mean, please look at it. Indian Army can be changed faster than the teaching community, sir. I say it with the greatest of respect. Please look at the routine of a school. The school routine is more rigid than that of the armed forces. We are looking at compliance, not looking at discipline. The compliance factor dominates, and what we will have to work on, it's slowly happening, is the ego of the teacher. The teacher was earlier on a guru. She became a teacher, then a facilitator, then an educator, then a coordinator, whatever. Today, she has to become a learning curator. Long term, she has to become a learning curator. That means all information available for you is readily in maybe 5 years, 10 years, with the internet backbone coming in, it will be available on internet and Google. There is no problem at all. The question is, how many of us go beyond the first page of a Google search? Second, how many of us verify? I'm talking to you, sir, for discussing with you my questions. I have read 8 newspapers and I've gone through 16 magazines to ensure that the numbers I tell you are truthfully reflected. I cannot believe on one news channel. So the role, thinking, behavior of a teacher has to change, and it cannot be done by one teacher. Second, this business of 8 specific classrooms have to go. Let's look at all those who are listening. Bal Gandekar, Avinash, Lakshmi, Hetal, all of us here, all of us have different levels of understanding of each subject. Sekhar might be at grade 11 for maths, but grade 6 for Kannada. 8 specific classrooms are now going to be not happening. It will be competency specific. Once that comes into play, then the drive for change will be much bigger. Till then, Hoopster has got real value for what you are doing.
So do you think the new, education policy, national education policy, that makes sense? Because they seem to have some very interesting points out there.
The policy always makes sense, sir. I was lucky enough to speak to Dr. Kasturi Rangan himself. I moderated a panel with students asking him questions. The thought behind it is always right, sir. There is never a problem. But please look at the implementation. The pandemic has helped. We are moving, if I understand the CBSE chairman right, he is focusing on competencies. We are moving towards credit-based systems. Change will happen, sir, but they will happen slowly. It will be 3 steps forward, 2 3/4 steps behind. Pandemic will have an impact. The pandemic will also change long term. For a sustainable school to work in Delhi, you will have to have online schooling 2 days in a week. Otherwise, the pollution will be so high, sir. So therefore, changes will happen. Changes will sustain itself. There will be some danda. There will be a lot of dukhi atmas, but it will happen, sir. I am optimistic.
That's interesting. Okay, coming back to our curriculum or co-curriculum or extracurriculum, wherever we want to position it. Even before the COVID hit us, when the real brick and mortar schools existed, we had issues with it. Now with the online coming in, the whole aspect has stopped, except for a couple of dance classes here and there. What do you think will be the impact of that vis-a-vis academics?
Okay, it will be huge. Firstly, schools will be different. I certainly believe that, I don't know whether any principals are sitting in, by the year 2030, 2035, the formal principal will not exist. It will be chief learning officer in the literal sense. And the physical education director will be more important than the principal, because spaces and physical activity will be dominant, with 25% of Indian young students overweight, and obesity, overweight is even higher. So firstly, how will a school look like? I look at a school, you look at 7 days. School A, Monday, Tuesday could be compulsory physical classes. Wednesday, Thursday will be optional physical classes. Fridays will be testing and games and sports. Saturdays and Sundays, the school will be an Amazon warehouse. That's the way I presume the new business and things will integrate itself. So in this school system, you will be having one, the online mode will dominate at certain levels. School closures will not happen. School mein chutti hai because of barish will not be there, except for those 3 specific days: Gandhi Jayanti, Independence Day, and Republic Day. Rest of the days, when strikes happen, when barish happens, online schooling will happen. So number of school days lost in good schools or schools with some sense will come down. So some balance will happen. However, The way we are going, I'm waiting very anxiously with excitement on the new national curriculum framework. How it defines the rest of it, the 250 books we are coming up with, the foundational things we are coming up with will make a difference. But I also believe that teachers will be forced to change, schools will be forced to change. The next 3 years, with 23 crore Indians going into poverty, there will be shortage of money with the average parent. And if private schools are not sensible, as I shared with you just before, students will migrate to government schools, whatever the cause it is. So we are in for some very unpredictable times, but I believe at the end of it, things will systemize itself out.
And how long do you think this will take? This settling down and the graph being
36 to 48 months minimum, because I thought by 2025 we would have a good system flowing. The pandemic has taken us back. So simple. There is going to be a third wave coming in, whether you like it or not. Kerala is showing indications of it. So children won't be sent to schools. After that, 12 to 18 age group, there has to be vaccination. There has to be booster doses. Till the time the nasal vaccine or children pediatric and above vaccination comes in, full-time schooling, we can forget it. Now, parents are realizing and willing to send. So the first case of COVID means the principal will be hauled over coals. They wouldn't take the risk. So my belief is, and later on, good, whether it is Shobha or many of these developers, they will have to locate the schools within the complexes, have to give houses for the teachers as part of the deal, and there is going to be very communal the way the armed forces do. There are going to be super communities coming up. That will be one of the less desirable things. How socio-emotional learning will happen online, I have absolutely no clues, because that is going to be a significant challenge. 30 to 40% of our teachers in northern India have had COVID. 100% of the teachers have lost a family member to COVID. 100% of our students have had some family member lost to COVID. Many students don't even know that their grandfather, grandmother have died. And the teachers have asked me in person, sir, I've lost my father-in-law, I've lost my nephew. Do you want me to be positive in the class? Impossible. So how do we manage that grief? How do we manage, provide grief leadership? And 10,000% increase in physical abuse of students at home. How do we tackle that? These are all the big questions, sir. We are all looking at it almost daily.
I know. Yeah, you're right. You're right. None of us are even talking about it. And this is where the concern is. Nobody's talking about these things. We are still talking about should we go to school or not go to school. We are still there. And I think there are much bigger stories. And like I tell everybody, it's the mental health epidemic will be far beyond what we are really facing.
Absolutely, sir.
It is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Why I'm saying this is real. The principal has gone through COVID. His wife has gone through COVID. He says, sir, I don't want to come to the office. I'm listless. The vice principal's father-in-law has died of COVID. I have heard principals saying my father and my father-in-law died of COVID. The numbers which are being quoted now, minimum it is in millions. It's not even in lakhs. So there are children who have lost. In the midst of all of this, who is taking care of their recovery? In all our meetings, the moment we touch upon grief, people break down. There is unalloyed grief, anger. I start off a session for 60 minutes, it goes on for 3 hours, and say, Colonel sir, please continue. We are desperate to share our grief. Where do the children share their grief? Children have written saying that suddenly there was a workshop going on. Suddenly 3 teachers started sobbing. desperately. They said, sir, one of our students has lost his father. He's not talking to me. How do I reach out to him? So these are huge challenges. This will only get worse before it gets better.
Yeah.
The mental health challenges
That's
are
right. Yeah, that's the reason why we have launched our mental health watch club and stuff like that, where you got the best of people in the domain expertise coming together.
I
But
believe,
having
sir,
said all that, if you look
yeah,
at
I
today,
believe that your mental health thing will have much more mileage than you can ever
oh
imagine.
yes, I really
That's
hope.
huge, huge response to societal demands. Please
Yes.
continue, sir.
Oh yes, sir. But the thing is, we are for the first time anywhere in the globe, we are taking mental health to the school level. Fourth graders are going to start, with the awareness programs, and that's what we're hoping, will bring about a change. Having said that, let's not look at the future. Let's not look at where things are. Let's just stick to the present reality, present requirement of gearing up or empowering the child, as they call it, to face the future. Okay. What do you think is required as it stands today? We don't know what tomorrow is. As it stands today, we have only online going on. Okay, there needs to be a go extra whatever curriculum you're talking about to be deployed. They need to know more than academics. How will they get into knowing more than academics?
Right, sir. I believe, and hopefully I'll get it done in the institutions. I call the 1-1-1 system, if we can do it. 1 hour, one student every week, the teacher to meet that student face to face. Are you able to hear me, sir?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm here. I just pulled up because of the fluctuation.
Yeah. 1-1-1. Can we use any open space to connect with the student? It's an initiative I believe Kerala government is going to start off with. There is no substitute now for physical interaction. Wherever students are physically interacting with teachers, they are sleeping better, they are much better off for the next week. So initially, I believe it has to be a 1-1-1 effort. One teacher every week, 1 hour interacting with the students at any open space wherever it's possible. That is the first step in the process. Second, not only have we got to listen, we have to got to listen actively. The biggest challenge which is put in these present pandemic conditions is, despite all the online everything etc., we are not actively listening to our students. We are listening to them for the sake of it, in terms of not even understanding what that 7th standard student staying inside at best 1000 square feet, in Bombay even lesser. What is the trauma or pain the students are going through? 3, create peer interactive communities, create a larger number of student peer groups. Schools which have succeeded have identified good students as peers, and they are working in terms of interacting with students in smaller groups in societal forms. And 4, as early as possible, reopen schools. Come what may.
You mean come what may? Will it happen right now? Because you yourself said that even the principal will be scared to come to school because if something goes wrong, he or she will be hauled.
I think it will be stop start, sir. Shuru to hoga. Shuru to hoga. It will be stop start. Our focus is on the class 9th and class 10th. It will be that kind of thing. So I'm not sure how it will happen. Unfortunately, what I thought through will happen last year happened. I wish to be proved wrong. In the unfortunately, it came true, and I wish, like Nawab of Pataudi said, I always bet against India. If I bet against India, if India wins, I'm very happy. If India loses, I make some money. So in this case, I wanted to be a lose. Yes.
So suppose you had the power to bring about change, okay, in the whole system, what would you do?
Till class 7, no textbooks. First thing. No books at all, no textbooks at all. Till class 7, I will propose till class 7, accept till grade 5. Because when you are a leader, you have to do some compromises. To move away from exams and move into at least till grade 10, I will go away from exams and go into competency and follow the NEP in letter and spirit, move it away. 3, make the teacher the most important person in India. I will certainly introduce what I call the National Teacher of the Year Award. The national teacher presented by the Prime Minister, she becomes, I will select 30 of the month from each state. They become brand ambassadors for the kind of learning we want, and we'll bring them down to each state also. They'll be left free to become master teachers, go around their states throughout the year. 4, most definitely, I will forcefully implement the neighborhood school concept. 5thly, the private public school partnership will be rigorously imposed, wherein the quality of private school education, although there are challenges, will be matched with the might of public school. Those clusters will work out better. And finally, I will make sure that the politicians elected, education becomes front and center. You give good education, you are elected for life. If not, you are sacked. These are the 5 things I would think, and it's possible. I don't see this not being possible because education is one area where is general understanding that it is working well. In Kerala, public sector has taken off. Telangana has done well. Delhi is improving. Every MP, MLA now finds that if he gives money to the local school, people are respecting him. The change is beginning to happen. And I will look at transformation. The number of children coming to schools are going to come down in the next 10 years. Already it is happening in Tamil Nadu, in many states. There are simply no children being produced. The DISC phenomenon, double income single kid or DITK. So making that as a long-term project, I will make use of these teachers, retrain them, set them right, improve the student-teacher ratio, and hopefully using them as because they are being threatened with job losses, use them as ambassadors to revolutionize our school system. Integrate vocational with academic.
Very interesting thought process. And if, as and when you plan your teachers thing, this award for the best teacher, please let us know, because that's something we have got very much in our mind too as part of our agenda. But that really needs to be encouraged. We need to encourage them. We need to really do the moral boost somewhere. So, anything else you would like to add to for people who want to be seeing this program either today or they'll be seeing it online on HoopX TV? Would you have any suggestions where we need certain disruptive thought processes? We are all becoming very cliche.
Yeah, fair.
So what can we do?
Simple. The first thing I look at in much more socio-emotional terms, I look at it in terms of behavior and how I looked at it. I'll give you parallels with the armed forces. It's a lot easier for me to describe them. See, a Jawan in the Indian Army, unlike what we understand, it's not Vande Mataram or Bharat Mata Ki Jai which drives them. First is they do it for their buddy. Then they do it for their Paltan. Then the izzat they get from the nation, the taking care which happens when they lose their lives, the training they are given every which way, in the best way possible. This is integrated by leadership. The Indian Armed Forces, the officer leads them. So in those terms, let's go beyond cliches. My first question is, I will ask you, do we require schools? I'll go from there. Do we require schools? Or do we require to have learning spaces which go beyond schooling? So can we have only learning spaces till grade 5? That's what I've been trying to explain. Only learning spaces. 2, Can co-parenting and being co-teachers work better? In schools I have led, sir, where transformations have happened, the first thing we found is the empowered teacher. The teacher was never scared that the parent will come, abuse him or her, and he can get away with it. Teachers are very fearful human beings. Nowadays, the school teachers pays the EMI for the family. So first thing we have to look at in a focused manner is make sure the teacher is incentivized both professionally, personally, and socially. That's the first challenge. And this is going beyond a cliche, it is workable. The way we look at an IAS officer or a doctor and stuff like that. We are not serious about it because our bureaucrats and our politicians do not have their children as soldiers or as teachers. Please tell me one senior bureaucrat whose son is in the armed forces. Rarely you will get it. The same thing happened in the United States. Post-conscription, it is only now that the armed forces are getting the importance because a large number of veterans are becoming senators and house reps, including Tammy Duckworth, who has lost both her legs. So the part which happens is from this teacher as only being that master G, we'll have to go beyond that. I believe that is starting to happen, sir. Ramachandra Guha talks about the United States having its revolutions over 250 years. In India, there is a social, there is a political, there is an economic, there is a cultural, there is a democratic revolution, all five happening together. And in that revolution where it's happening, we simply do not know how it's moving forward. So my belief is looking at schools not as schools but learning spaces, making it community oriented, not going beyond the 3-kilometer limit, and working with the government, making it trust centric would be the long-term futures.
So every time I hear people talk about education and what can be done or what should be done, one of the things I feel they're missing out very badly, if I may use that English, are the parents. Because having dealt with education for the last, say, at least 13 years now, and also being a filmmaker, having dealt with these things in my documentaries, nobody seems to address the issues of parents. Because I think the culprit in the whole story are the parents. But I have seen the way parents behave with teachers, like you rightly said. I have seen the way people talk, especially in the new era of the IT world. You know, they just think they're above everybody else.
Fair.
So why is there no conversation happening around the parenting?
Sir, the society has got no incentive at doing that, sir. Because please remember, there are two parts to that whole story. The parents who are shouting the highest are the new age privileged parents. And for them, just like hospitals have become, as the Supreme Court observed, as one market, for them, schooling is a service profession. We are customers. And for them, I have this brutal question. You want marks. Your son or daughter are interested in pornography. Can we give pornography to them, Rajkundra style? So please do not look at schools as customer organizations. And I did a small study, and I'll tell you the facts of it. One teacher was really challenged in the school. He was a bad teacher. बोल के बड़ा हल्ला हुआ. All 700 of my parents gathered and said that he's a bad teacher. I said, ठीक है. Before the next parent-teacher meeting, conduct tests, and I told him to give 45 out of 50 for every student. They came all the parents came. I was in uniform, Major Sekhar. Major Sekhar, you are better than Sarvapalli Radhakrishnan. Our students have improved. Aapne danda maar diya, the teacher has improved. I closed the doors of my auditorium, called the teacher, I'm not naming that teacher, and called the parents and distributed their children's mark sheets to them. I showed them their mistakes and this is the problem. And the teacher concerned was not very popular because he was a little cut and dry. Suddenly, 200 teachers wanted to visit the parents wanted to visit the washroom immediately. They wanted me to open the doors. That's one part. We also know how teachers are. तुम तो जिंदगी भर पढ़ेगा नहीं, तू तो मूर्ख है, मुट्ठाल है, तेरे को कुछ नहीं आता, तू, you are always coming last. Those microaggressions are also a challenge. So, sir, the society has to find the right balance. How quickly we find the balance will also tell you how dignified our society is.
That's exactly. So I think what we really need to do is also educate the parents, you know. Well, that's something, and that's something we are looking at.
Education of parents will only happen when society educates itself, sir. Absolutely. My students ask me, Arnab Goswami never apologizes. Why do you want me to apologize? So it comes. We discuss this happened live in a debate competition when the child used bad language. Whatever I am sharing are real life experiences, what we know on ground. When I have a student who is sexually abused, the school says, I don't want to keep the child because it will impact on our school. We have to question ourselves, sir. When a teacher has done something sexually wrong, we sack him and throw him out. We don't send him out towards POXO because school ka reputation kya hoga. And this directly impacts on society, how the society looks at it. When we tell a parent that the child's grand uncle is touching the child at the wrong place, the parents refuse to believe it. We give them proof through the counselor. They leave the house and go away. They do not confront the grand uncle. 90% of all sexual abuses happen within the four walls of the house. The child knows the perpetrator, boys more than girls. So all the societal ills cannot vanish in a day, sir. Hoopster has to work hard for the next 100 years to take them moving. All of us have to raise our voices.
Yes. No, it's wonderful to have you talk like this because it's so important to bring the things forward the way it is. And what we have been trying to do is actually, sugarcoat things, put on masks, and then lead the whole thing forward, which doesn't make sense. I would like the audience, I'm sure I got some educators there who would like to ask some questions. Any questions you guys have got? Because we are running short of time.
Feel free. Video
Feel free. We are on an open conversation. That's what Hoopsters is. And it's wonderful to have somebody who's willing to speak openly, which is nice. But you said something about parents and said there's no what? Not initiative. There's no something when I asked you about the incentive. No, isn't it same in all the cases? Unless you have incentive, people are not going to do things.
Yes,
sir. So what is the incentive to change education?
The incentive that a better society, my children will do better without going through. You see online classes, most students are copying. I think if educators are here, they'll say that. Most students are copying. Why the parent is not stopping them? See, our problem is we always define it. If we have to say a line, we will quote the Bhagavad Gita or Mahabharata, Ashwatthama Naraha Kundara, or we'll talk about Jayadratha. We'll have to remember even the Bhagavad Gita is multifaceted. There is a story there is the Bhagavad Gita of Krishna. There is the Bhagavad Gita as understood by Arjun, as heard by Sanjaya and understood and reinterpreted for Dhritarashtra to hear. All four have different perspectives of the same thing. So we will have to find out a golden mean of these perceptions.
That's wonderfully said. I think wonderful way to end this conversation. One more minute. Anything else you want to say? So I think it's just absolutely brilliant.
All right. I'll end by the story which I always say is in terms of the three swargs we have. We have Vaikunth, we have Kailas, and we have where Indra stay. Indra says, if you go to Indralok, you get everything you want, but if something down below Indra feels he is jealous about, he will send Menaka, Ramba somewhere to spoil tapasya. He is consistently jealous and thinks about it. In Kailas, everyone, nobody thinks about these things, but they are bhook ke aage chale gaye hain. It's a different interpretation. Parvati asks, what is in it for me? You go to Vishnu Lok, you have to be not only be happy, peaceful, you have to make others peaceful. So I always believe as a teacher, your job is to be a giver. Comes parallel to the great book written by Adam Grant, a professor at Wharton. He talks about givers, takers, and matchers. Are you a giver? Are you a taker? Are you a matcher? So in terms of the swarg you want, you go to the place where you are a giver, and there are a lot of givers along with you. I would wish you happy Guru Purnima and thank you for the opportunity to speak at length over the last 1 hour.